the urban houses, you can't even think of the agony a person in rural kitchen goes through. It is that we still talk about that 1/3 of the citizens on this planet still don't have access to clean cooking as yet. And over there, and if you are in a far off place, you'll find even in many parts of the world, young girls and women collecting firewood. There are government regulations, and really speaking, in spite of that, they are bound to cut firewood to make their kitchen run. So it is, they end up spending quite a bit of their time. And more than that, a fact which we all ignore, it is what is happening to their health. I'm working for the Energy and Resources Institute, and ever since I joined that institute in 1985 or before that, TERI was actually working on how to find those solutions, and indoor air pollution was something which was much discussed, even I should say 4 decades ago. And still, if we are not able to provide access to clean cooking, I think we are doing injustice to all those who are cooking food for us. Before we get into discussion, I have two very eminent panelists with us today. It's His Excellency Professor Watanabe, who is President of Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, that is ERIA, and Mr. Praveen Khanuja, who is Additional Secretary with Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. So I'll request first Professor Watanabe to give his opening comments before we open it for more discussion and specific questions. Over to you, Professor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dhawan, Director General TERI, and my name is Tetsuya Watanabe, President of ERIA. ERIA is Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, international organization based in Jakarta, Indonesia, serving the policy making through economic research and policy recommendation for ASEAN, ASEAN Secretariat, and India, and wider region of East Asia. I'm very privileged today to address India Energy Week 2025 to discuss a pressing issue of universal clean cooking and energy access. First, I just briefly touch upon the overall perspective before going into the clean cooking energy issues. First, I would like to emphasize access to energy is the foundation of our modern civilization, yet millions in the global south, including Southeast Asia and India, Africa, and beyond. For these countries, access to energy, these countries still remain deprived of the fundamental necessity. While these countries are home to over 56% of the world population, the global south accounts for only 18% of global power generation capacity. This stark imbalance underpins the persistent lack of energy access that continue to afflict many communities in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Furthermore, geopolitical crises such as Russian gas disruptions have severely impacted LNG procurement for countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the Philippines, exacerbating energy insecurity. That is a general background before going into today's topic of clean cooking energy access. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Khanuja.
Thank you. Morning, Excellency President ERIA. Dr. Vibha Dhawan, TERI is a very important critical institute in the energy research. and to everyone present who are in this panel discussion. First of all, I'll welcome you on behalf of the Ministry to this second day of the India Energy Week 2025. And I hope that you're having a good time, learning time, and collaborative time with all your colleagues. I feel that access to affordable clean cooking fuel is a basic need for all the households. As the moderator also mentioned about the drudgery it brings in if the cooking fuel itself is not clean. And I would take it as it should be the fundamental right of, because food, right to food is kind of fundamental right, and therefore access to clean cooking fuel should also be under similar category. It is part of SDG 7, access to affordable and sustainable energy for cooking. Lack of this access to clean cooking fuel affects over 2 billion people worldwide, and more than half are in Africa. Somehow, due to unavoidable circumstances, two of our excellencies could not join this panel, and we wanted to show the way India actually moved in this direction very, very successfully from an LPG excess of 56% in 2014 to a near saturation excess in 2025. And the lack of access to cooking fuel, more than half of the people in Africa have this issue. They're using charcoal, wood, agricultural waste, and animal dung as fuel. They inhale harmful toxic fumes and smoke with dire consequences for health. This is the second leading cause of premature deaths in Africa. Now, if you spend hours spending for just for these non-cleaner cooking fuels, your opportunities for education, employment, independence, they are very, very limited. So the ladies of the households, the children also. So if they are investing so much time and just searching for this wood or cow dung, it is nearly impossible that they'll have further success, economic opportunities in life. Last year, I had attended in May 2024, there was an IA's Clean Cooking in Africa Summit. Now, that was to make 2024 a turning point for progress on ensuring clean cooking access for all. That summit had mobilized 2.2 billion in financial pledges from government and private sector. I'll just add one data point that during last 10 years, India spent about $32 billion on account of LPG subsidy or meeting under recoveries of the OMCs. So 2 billion, in my opinion, it is a great beginning, but much more is to be done if we feel that our brothers and sisters in Africa and other nations, they need access to clean cooking food.
Thank you, Mr. Khanuja, and that brings me to another point. And very rightly, you have mentioned the success story of India. Now, because we have lots of international participants as well, and therefore I would request you to highlight a bit more, because it is something which comes from the policy angle, which becomes extremely important for a country. And of course, our Honorable Prime Minister definitely had taken leapfrog that it is that we have to provide that access. But then it's also a mindset change that is required by the rural people. But it's a success story. So if you can throw more light on what made this, was it finances alone? Was it subsidy? Was it mindset? So what all we have done right to ensure that people go towards adopt clean cooking?
As I just mentioned, that last year when I attended this clean cooking fuel summit in Paris, we had given a detail on the way LPG access catapulted in India. This started with in 2016, and when Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana scheme was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister in May 2016. Now, before that, only 56% of the Indian households had access. And that was about 14 crore or 140 million connections. Now we have more than 33, I think it's about 35 million LPG connections. So 10 years, the consumption of LPG has grown from 16.3 million tons in 2013-14. We have our financial year starts from 1st April to March. And in 23-24, we consumed about 30 million metric tons of LPG. There's been a CAGR of an annual growth rate of 6%. And out of this 30 million tons, 90% is meant for domestic cooking. But then there are other issues that we imported about 19 million tons during 23-24, and that was an outgo of 10.5 billion of for LPG. So these are LPG imports. On the one hand, we import crude and we refine it for various petroleum products, including LPG. On the other hand, we also import LPG because our supply from the domestic sources is not sufficient to meet demand. Now, under PMUI, if I'm allowed to, because
Sure.
in the Paris summit, there was a ticker which said 3 minutes, and I had suggested that I should get at least 5-7 minutes. Here, with two of us, I think we have sufficient time to elaborate and to explain what did we do in PM Ujjwala Yojana. Now, under PMUI, one adult woman of every poor household is eligible for a free LPG connection along with accessories like stove plate, hose pipe, together with first free cylinder covering. It covers a cost of about $50. The selection of poor households initially was done from a socio-economic caste census 2011. Extensive campaigns at the district village levels were carried out with the help of district officers and village heads for bringing out behavioral changes, as you just mentioned, for switching to LPG. Because many times when we start using the wood or coal and we think that this is the best way to cook because the flavor or the aroma which comes from that some kind of tandoor, I would say. But then even when the LPG started about 4 decades back, this issue was there. So when you extend it to all the households in the country, similar problems were there. Now we brought these village heads to discuss the benefits of LPG, and these were called village panchayats. We held campaigns across the villages. Now, what made PMUI successful in India was availability of a very robust IT backbone with our oil marketing companies. Oil marketing companies are the Indian Oil Corporation, the HPCL, Hindustan Petroleum Corporation, BPCL, Bharat Petroleum. Now, these are the ones, these are the public sector undertakings, and these were roped in for running this Ujjwala campaign. These are all government companies, and they had a very robust IT backbone. They had internet connectivity, and large households in our country had smartphones. The direct benefit transfer also started at the same time, where earlier before this 2016, we were giving the subsidized cylinder to the customer. After DBTL, what we did, we asked the customers to buy at the market price and then take the subsidy in the form of a direct benefit transfer to their bank accounts. Now with Jan Dhan Yojana, all the schemes of the Honorable Prime Minister, Jan Dhan Yojana, the Ujjwala scheme, the Aadhaar implementation, so everything actually just dovetailed into each other for a hugely successful PMUI. Now, we even had this extensive zero balance bank accounts under the Jan Dhan Yojana. Before that, even opening a bank account was a huge difficulty. We joined the dots for a coherent LPG supply chain, including direct payment subsidy into their accounts, preventing any leakage. Now, the OMCs also upgraded their import infrastructure, their LPG storage facilities, bottling plants, distribution channels. There was a huge increase in the number of distributors, especially in the rural areas, and there was a huge political commitment at the top for the successful implementation scheme. This is the way actually
Sure.
Ujla worked,
Yeah,
and
no.
the way we have 100% penetration of LPG.
Absolutely. And so, one thing to be noted here is that, in spite of the fact that as a country we never had too much of LPG, but the government took the bold step that we must import and provide it to the rural kitchens. So, that's a very appreciable step taken by the government. And when Mr. Khanuja was talking about the change in mindset, it becomes all the more important for our country, because we are also used to cooking on slow fire. So therefore, for people to shift or to their palate to get adjusted to another way of cooking was something which was again appreciable at the village level. So I'll come to you, Professor Watanabe. The point which is mentioned, that the government took the initiative, and of course there was equal enthusiasm from the receiving end. What is in your experience in other ASEAN countries? And if you can also throw light on, why do you feel that the growth in Africa is so slow?
Oh, thank you very much. Again, the issue of clean cooking is not just energy problem. It is, as Mr. Kanuja, Additional Secretary, mentioned, that it is a matter of public health, environmental sustainability, and economic equity. In India alone, biomass combustion contribute 1 million premature deaths annually due to indoor air pollution. The economic burden of energy subsidies, such as in case of Indonesia, underscore the need for scalable and sustainable clean energy solutions. Our research, area research, has shown that the reliance on traditional biomass remains widespread in countries such as Laos PDR, Cambodia, Myanmar, although it is gradually being replaced by LPG and electricity, as Mr. Kanuja, Secretary, mentioned. It is also important to note that transitioning to clean cooking energy requires not just policy intervention, as we discussed, previous speakers discussed, but also behavioral change. Approach that respect cultural habits while clearly demonstrating the health and financial benefits of modern cooking solutions. Overcoming these barriers will require community-driven solutions tailored to local traditions and local communities, emphasizing tangible improvements in health and household economics will be there. Madam Moderator raised a question about the situation in Africa. Maybe on that one, we need to have another round of discussion how global cooperation, especially South-South cooperation, sharing the best practices and sharing the best technology, and that kind of collaboration we need to discuss further. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If we look at this entire program, and we started practically in all the countries as improved cook stoves, so that whatever fuel wood you are using, you are ensuring that the smoke is directed outside the house, and it's not the indoor pollution can be improved. We also then we move towards, of course, capturing energy, because if you put water around it, can that fumes which are going out, they can heat your water and so on. So that way we also try to develop with the traditional way of cooking. And then of course we had other methods, and such as biogas, and now we are talking of compressed natural gas. And that also becomes that you are killing two birds with one stone, because on one hand you are taking care of the waste which is generated at the village level, and on the other hand it is that the clean fuel is made available to the kitchens. There are problems, there are infrastructure problems, and the infrastructure in different countries is different. It's also like the socio-economic conditions, because many times when we talk of the biogas plants, it's also that who owns them, and will the community biogas plant work, and thereafter how that gas will be used. We are also today talking about solar cooking, and of course solar cookers, they were introduced many years back, but today we are thinking of, and IOCL in fact has brought out a solar cooking method by it, more or less the similar kind of cook stoves that are used today with LPG. And so it's a long journey that we are talking about. When we talk of energy transition, we also talk somewhere about energy transition for a rural kitchen is access to cleaner fuel, while we talk about green steel production or green hydrogen production and so on. So in that energy transition as well, we are talking that it should be just transition, it should be for everyone. So while we are discussing about this issue, I would also like the two panelists to discuss about the differences in infrastructure that exist and the way forward, that how do they see their own countries and how the different methods of transition can be applicable in the South, in Asia and Africa, where most of the energy poverty exists today. So over to you, Professor Watanabe. What are your views about the energy transition, and especially in the cooking sector?
Oh, thank you very much. So, as I emphasize that global cooperation, especially cooperation among the South countries, will be critical. First, as you mentioned, that advancing sustainable bioenergy development, that is a very important one, like second generation biofuels, bioethanol, green biofuels. For achieving this international cooperation, of course, among the South countries and international cooperation with developed economies are critical. And also establishing cooperation framework to ensure sustainable biofuel production without exacerbating land use conflicts and biodiversity loss. That is very important. Secondly, it's creating affordable and a competitive electricity market. That is also important. And India's successful, visionary initiative like Green Grids Initiative, One Sun, One World, and One Grid. These kind of initiative will be critical both for preparing infrastructure and preparing for the market. Last one is strengthen cross-regional partnership, as we rightly mentioned, for energy security and economic resilience. India and ASEAN, the two strong voices of Global South, share a deep economic and strategic partnership, which should extend into energy sector. For example, ASEAN has a growing energy demand, and India has a technological advancement and technological expertise in renewable. There is a huge potential for collaboration in clean energy access, including clean cooking. And also the Global South could gear up to become a global rule maker and establish carbon neutral energy trade standards and platform for knowledge sharing on circular carbon economy. So we have lots to collaborate on the energy transition as well as, affordable clean cooking to the people.
Thank you so much. And 2 points which you emphasized apart from many others. And one being that if we continue on this path, there is a danger that we may lose biodiversity in the buffer zones and even the forest, because if it's not available in the nearby areas, the villagers will be bound to go to the forest and they'll cut what is available easily, and that impact the regeneration of forests as a whole as well. So one should be sensitive towards that issue. And the most important issue which you raised is that of partnerships, because what we must realize that we only have one planet to live. And therefore, rather than reinventing a broken wheel, if we have got success in something, that must be shared. We are falling short of time, we are falling short of finances. And therefore, whatever we have done, let's share. So partnerships becomes important, and I'll say, gone are the days when we used to talk about technology transfer. Today, we should talk about co-development of technology. Because what is required, the technology which is suitable for one area, one region, it cannot be 100% replicated in another area, because they have different socio-economic conditions, they have different infrastructure and different way of living. And therefore, the technologies where you are, you must have partnerships and develop technologies with them. There are lots of success stories, and really speaking, those success stories are to be replicated with some modifications in different parts of the world. So I'll come to Mr. Khanuja, and especially because India is a success story. So how do we ensure that we take these technologies to other parts of the world as well?
Thank you. Thank you for this question. And before that, I wanted to add my take on this energy transition in the cooking sector. Because if we see those who are using, say, harmful cooking fuel, which is basically biodung or forest residue and that agri residue, the idea is that it's an inefficient usage of that. Otherwise, if you convert it into into say some kind of biogas or compressed biogas, which actually used for automobiles, so there the energy transition is, they're already using the renewable energy. It's the inefficient usage of that renewable energy which is causing all the problem. So their energy transition, I think I'll leave induction stoves here. But then the idea is that before we get into the efficient usage of that renewable energy or the feedstock which they're using, they should get on to the efficient usage and the cleaner, much cleaner usage through LPG, piped natural gas, ethanol, or solar cooker as you just mentioned, and then this induction stove or the electric thing. Now, for us, I'll come to India. LPG was the choice for us. We had already invested time, money, and about 140 million connections were already on. But then now, once you shift to LPG or similar kind of fossil fuel, but a much cleaner fossil fuel and a much efficient usage in the form of LPG packed cylinders, we have to realize that LPG per se is used not only for domestic cooking or this commercial cooking, but also for petrochemicals, space heating, welding, auto fuel. So you are having a product which is used across this value chain. Now the price of, suppose the petchem demand goes up, could be in these few countries, Europe, China, US. Suddenly you see that the LPG prices have gone up. So I just got some data, and generally Saudi contract price, which is declared monthly, and there are other benchmarks also, but that is the price which is used for this our price determination or price build up for our LPG. That during last 10 years, it ranged from a lowest of about $300 per metric ton to a high of $950 per metric ton. Now you have made people use LPG, But then your LPG, I just mentioned we import about 60% of LPG, and we also import crude. So your prices are determined on based on international product prices, which is say in a case at Saudi contract price, Saudi CP declared monthly. Your price to the consumer has changed 3 times during last 10 years. Now for this continued excess of LPG, as I'll take it as a cleaner transition to the cooking fuel, you have to sustain their costs uh, uh, other than the infrastructure for excess distributors or marketing channels. The costs are a very big determinant, and especially when your LPG or similar cooking fuel is dependent on international prices. Technology, obviously, as I just mentioned, and the excellency just mentioned. So that
Thank you. And very important point which has been made, that there are going to be competing demands for the same product, as well as the international market. And of course, that will even hold true for the biomass, because that is one of the worries, that you develop your entire project based on that this is going to be the cost. But as the demand goes up, the cost also goes up. And therefore, the cost competitiveness remains an important point. Now, what in a way I would come to another point, and that is open for discussion. We are today talking of carbon tax. We are talking of cross boundary carbon tax. We are, in fact, talking of carbon markets which will get developed. Now, while we are trying to achieve that and encourage people to follow clean practices or clean energy sources, can we think of that the carbon market should also take care of cleaner fuel? If we look at what impact it's bring, because of course Government of India has given huge subsidy on LPG, especially for the rural Indian kitchens, what we have to realize is that yes, those subsidies were extremely important, because ultimately you are contributing to nation building through better health of those communities. So therefore, what we ignore is the air pollution. We ignore the impact of air pollution on the health of our citizens, and therefore these subsidies should have been, and that's the right step that was made in the past. But let's also look at that. Can we think of the clean fuel? We are talking of clean fuel, but then clean fuel in kitchens be eligible for carbon tax? And it's, of course, it's a question which perhaps can be debated. We don't have a right answer at the moment. And should that be raised in different platforms that to make it a case, and so that for them also there is something to look forward to? And why I'm saying that, because carbon markets have been developed for trees, and if you even plant an agroforestry tree, you can earn carbon credits. So why not from kitchens as well? So I'll first come to Mr. Khanuja. Let's look at Indian view, what he feels about it. And of course, those will be your personal views, because it's still to be debated in the government. And then I'll ask the same question to Professor Watanabe.
Thank you very much. This is an interesting question. If you see that the carbon market in India, whether it's for we are still looking at CBG, whether the compressed biogas producer, how does he get, or how does that project proponent gets the carbon credits. So in India, Ministry of Environment, MOEFCC, and Ministry of Power are actually the nodal ministries for this carbon market development. They have already issued the guidelines for the voluntary mechanism. We are already on to the stage of voluntary, and then there will be a compliance mechanism. As far as LPG getting carbon credits, once you shift from, say, the unclean cooking fuel to a much cleaner cooking fuel, but then LPG, if it is LPG or it is basically again coming from the fossil fuel, your carbon credits may not be that higher, because finally you are getting it from refined as a refined product or from a condensate of the natural gas. So there is an issue, but then because it saves the forests, as Professor Watanabe just mentioned, His Excellency mentioned. So it saves the forest. So that kind of carbon sink is being created. You will definitely the multilateral organizations, the banks, if the process is on, because I just mentioned that we need huge amounts for subsidy for sustenance of usage of continued usage of LPG. If we give it to a poor household, as of now, in India, the price of an 14.2 kg cylinder is 503 rupees, the daily price, which is about, I think, $6 or something, even lesser than that. So $6, and the consumption is about 4.5 cylinders a year, and it has already, actually it has gone up, and overall it's about 6 cylinders a year for per household. So for 1.5 months, 2 months, you have just spent $6 for an LPG cylinder. So you have saved so much of drudgery. You have saved forests. You have saved wood, which was at the with cheaper cost, and you were just cutting down trees. So there is a huge case of carbon credits on this LPG usage also, although it's a part of the tree of fossil fuels. So I hope whenever the institutions or the governments, they spend money on this LPG access, on the infrastructure for LPG access, the import of LPG, they should get carbon credits, and that too through a compliance mechanism. But as you just mentioned, these are my personal views.
Absolutely.
And it would take time to kind of crystallize, or they all getting converged.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Professor, over to you now.
Thank you very much. Carbon credit and the pricing is a very, I think, important issue. Of course, we need to be careful about implication on distribution and implication on industrial competitiveness. But basic, I think basic here is, I mean, of course, internalize market externality into the market. So we need to change the price structure. Otherwise, energy transition will not happen. But it's a very delicate issue. But as both of you mentioned, that there will be technological solution that can be credited. And also there are nature-based solutions like carbon sink in the rainforest and peatland and etc. So yeah, that is something we need to think of, brainstorm and discuss in detail. And talking about I mean, solar cooking and carbon credit, maybe we need to have some scalability, etc. But it's a very interesting and important policy question. Thank you very much.
Yeah, because that's something we have to think of the future. What is it we can do to fasten the pace at which the cleaner cooking access should be made to citizens in different parts of the world? So I'll just like to have final comments first from you, Professor Watanabe, and then from Mr. Kanuja.
Thank you very much. This is an issue that South countries like Asia and Africa, India and Southeast Asia needs to think about seriously. The economic and social situation are quite different from the other part of the world, and this is a growing economy, need enhance living standard of people. So that's a very important perspective coming from here, from the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now it was lots of interesting discussions and ideas came. I think that overall reaching universal access to clean cooking is not about reinventing the wheel. The technologies and the clean fuels, they exist. Whether it is ethanol or LPG or PNG or solar cooker. The policy frameworks also exist, and especially seeing the hugely successful Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana in India. The core challenge that remains implementation to tackle the issue of lack of financial resources, both at the individual and at the governmental levels, and insufficient energy infrastructure. Now, what I feel, the governments, the development banks, international organizations, and NGOs, they must commit to making clean cooking accessible, implementing practical solutions, and scaling up current solutions as an essential part of the energy transition. this would need deep financial, moral, and political commitments and perseverance above all. Thank you.
Thank you. And we come to the end of the session. And what I would like to say is that we do have the technologies, there is a will, there is success story. What we need to do is partner, increase infrastructure where we lack it, and make it that we should take a pledge, all of us, that let's ensure that every citizen on this planet, especially our women, they are able to live with dignity, and let's work towards that. How do we ensure that they don't have to travel long distances to collect firewood and they are not subjected to indoor air pollution? So we can make it a much better world simply by taking small technologies, small baby steps, and ensure that they are able to have access, and energy transition is for them as well. Thank you so much.